So, hello everyone, and welcome to the December edition of the Top Shelf Tech Security Brief with ZX Security, coming from the Instillery Security Intelligence. That's getting to be a bit of a mouthful now. So, welcome once again to Ian White from ZX Security. Ian, great to have you again. It's always good.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
You?
I'm good, man. Looking forward to the summer period.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. It's been manic these last few weeks. Yeah. So last session of the year, I thought we've got a few bits and pieces to talk about today. I wanted to just touch quickly on mandatory disclosure, as that's actually come through now. What are your thoughts on that? I know we've had a quick conversation about this in the past, but now that it's here, what are your thoughts around how that's
again, kind of a brief summary is I'm very happy it's finally happened, and it's finally gotten to the stage in New Zealand that we finally have something that's putting companies in line. But I do still see it as kind of a stage 1 of stage 10. You know, $10,000 is a lot of money for some businesses, but for the big entities that potentially have targets on their backs, $10,000 is nothing. So a lot of those people won't see that as an incentive to increase their security posture. It's roughly the same price as getting, or probably less than getting security tested, or some form of getting a managed service provider in to help with their security. So I think the balance needs to be increased substantially for it to actually have weight. But again, first steps, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. Baby steps, right? How do you see it panning out? Do you think there'll be, a couple of test cases to make the point that it's actually here now?
Again, yeah, for first blood, I think there definitely will be a case of first blood, and it would be very good for it to be done in a light that it generates kind of good exposure, but not in a heavily negative manner, just from an exposure point of view. And whether that's CertNZ or whoever may be in the privacy commissioner having good connections with the audiences, like the newsrooms and everything like that, and getting it out there well, I think that would be a really good kind of PR piece to do.
Yeah.
But again, the end goal isn't to make heaps of coin. The end goal is to make New Zealand secure. So they should be doing it all within their power to do that successfully.
Yeah. I noticed, I was looking at the CertNZ stats for Q3 yesterday, and noticed that there's, there is a continual increase. I went back to, sort of 2018, 2019 to have a look, and there's a steady increase, quarter on quarter. But there has been quite a big uplift this last month. I wonder if that's just because people are, starting to get into the habit of reporting stuff, or whether that's just because there's more stuff that's going on out there.
It's very good, because again, the correlation of, are people actually getting attacked more, or are people just saying, oh crap, there's a thing now we can actually report to?
Yeah.
Because I think the privacy commissioner and that entity have done a good job at letting the New Zealand public that aren't in security that, hey, there is an avenue you can go down. And I think that is getting better. So I think that, in my opinion, again, who bloody knows? In my opinion, I think that's where the more numbers are coming from.
Yeah. I think next year we'll see it. We'll see a big uplift as more breaches get reported, because they have to be. And then I guess after I'm no statistician, but I guess after a few months, or 6 months or whatever, you can start to see trends coming out of it. So it'd be interesting.
Exactly, and from New Zealand's point of view, like thus far, our bar maybe NCSC and GCSB and some of the other intelligence agencies and CertNZ included in there, like, who really knows what our attack vectors are like for the vast majority of New Zealand? Because for the ones they know, but that's a false narrative, because a lot of people don't. They will go to companies like yourself or to ourselves and not go to the government agencies and let them know, hey, these are the type of people attacking us. And if you're critical infrastructure and GCSB or whomever gets involved, they're not going to know,
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, I've, of the sort of years that I've been working in this field, I did my first breach notification for a client this month. So it's definitely changed things. So talking about breaches, I wanted to just touch on the FireEye breach that's all over the news just at the moment. For those people who don't know what FireEye do, they're a big sort of red teaming and security threat intelligence type organization, do a lot of work for the American government, and they just got breached and lost all of their all of their red teaming test tools. Intrigued to know what your thoughts on that are in terms of what the risks coming out of that might be.
Yeah, it's interesting. So again, I had a good chat with one of the staff members before jumping on today, just about their opinion from being an actual red teamer and from having their discussions online with some of their mates that work in the States and work in the same arena, as much as pretty similar to what they effectively do what ZX Security do, but at a much smaller level.
Yeah.
And we probably don't go into the threat intelligence as much as FireEye would. But yeah, it's interesting. From looking at the narrative on the news, hackers have gotten in and taken their tool set. But again, one of the guys at ZX made the good point to me. If the hackers are good enough to get into FireEye, they don't really need their tool set.
Yeah, that's a good
false flag. So one leads me to believe that they're going in there to try and gain information about certain other nations, whether that's America or anyone else. I know the FBI are involved at the moment. So yeah, my conclusion on it, from being very selfish in relation to ZX Security, is that it realizes how vulnerable you are as a pen testing consultancy.
Yeah.
That, you know, a lot of organizations that deal in security testing have a lot of clients that hold significant data that other nations or other people could use for their own benefit. So it kind of says, oh shit, now we're not that we are a target, because I don't think we are, but people may look at us and assume that.
Yeah, and especially with the kind of work that you do, you're identifying those weaknesses in people's infrastructures, aren't you? So that kind of information could be very, very, very valuable to some people.
Yeah, and again, kind of to bring back the false flag, and it's not to push blame or point blame at anything, but if an entity is to attempt to attack ZX Security, which would definitely have a much higher security posture than a number of other entities in New Zealand, there would be no reason to attack us.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
I think the other thing for me is just that it goes to show that no one's immune from this stuff. So you get one of the highest profile security companies in the world. They do all sorts of work for all sorts of governments.
They are one of the biggest entities and well known for it. Exactly.
Yeah, and they're still vulnerable. So just goes to show that just because you have the sort of money and the resources, there's always people out there with more money and more resources.
I was reading yesterday, I think it was yesterday, about the NCSC in the UK just discussing specific nation state attackers targeting vaccine labs in the UK, trying to steal IP there. And one would assume that if you have the vaccine to coronavirus, you would have some shit hot security to make sure that people people are getting in there. It's pretty interesting, and again, pretty daunting that, again, you could have all the money in the world, because I think the COVID vaccine is one of those situations. This money's not an issue; just get it done. Later. And security is definitely part of that. So if you have an unlimited budget, people can still manage to get in.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about COVID, that's a great segue into just having a bit of a roundup of what's happened this year. I think it's been an extraordinary year.
I'm an epidemiologist, so please don't.
For lots of different reasons. I think that there's a whole bunch of people who will be very glad to put 2020 behind them. What have been the sort of standout things for you this year from a security perspective?
It's not to speak on a positive note of what's happened this year, because obviously there's been a significant amount of negatives, but from a New Zealand security posture point of view, being honest, what I've seen is a huge acceleration in a number of our clients to become more secure, and a lot of that was to do with their consultants or their team members or their staff working remotely. So a lot of VPNs that had never been reviewed had finally been reviewed. I think a lot of budget that hadn't been put in security teams' pockets had finally put in their pockets. So from a purely selfish point of view in relation to ZX Security and the security posture of New Zealand, it's definitely taken a quantum leap in relation to where it was to where it's now going. Who knows what will happen in the future, whether, again, those security budgets will get pulled back into other areas in a couple of months. I'm not sure. And we can only hope that those people in those roles are really genuinely sort of pushing security and saying that it's still relevant. But that's the biggest thing that I've seen, to be honest, from a security point of view. A number of our clients have definitely reached out and said, hey, not that we were always a tick box organization, but we were always a tick box organization. Now we're actually looking at getting better, which is great. that's the end goal, right?
And look, I think we've seen similar things, really. We had when everyone went into lockdown initially, there was that massive sort of mad panic to try and get people working remotely, and people put in these hairy bit of string solutions. And then what we've seen over the last couple of months really is people coming back to that and saying, okay, we sort of did what we needed to do, but now we need to do it properly. So we've definitely seen an uplift in security spend over probably the last quarter. I'm with you. I hope that carries on into next year. I think the regulatory changes will help to drive that as well. There's now the new privacy law and all the rest of it that's going to help to drive that. And as we spoke earlier in the year as well, we've also seen some of the big industry stakeholders get involved in that, like the Reserve Bank coming forwards with their security guidelines. So it's positive stuff, right? I think the other thing as well is we've had a couple of big high profile issues this year as well, and that helps to drive people, that old adage about not wasting a crisis, so
I think even though previously there was other incidents, whether you want to go all the way back to MSD a number of years ago and then all the way forward to today, I think the literacy of cybersecurity in New Zealand has jumped. So previously, even with the kiosk event a number of years ago and a couple of other things, maybe last year with Treasury and all this, whether it was hacking or not is irrelevant to the conversation of the general public understanding of cybersecurity literacy and understanding what the hell that means. And I definitely think because of the fluency within the news, a lot of people are finally getting to grips with, this is a thing. And then to conclude again, with exacerbating the issue of COVID and everyone working from home saying, hey, is that secure? Oh yeah, that's a thing. I forgot about that. It's put things forward. And I just like you said, I hope that continues. I genuinely do. But yeah, there's been a number of other things as well too, kind of looking kind of at 2020 and the year before, even in relation to ransomware, just discussing that for a minute. Their motives of how they get their ransoms to pay. Previously it was, hey, we'll just lock your shit up and never give it back. Now it's, we're giving you a deadline in 2 weeks. If you don't, we're going to publish all your data online. And that's a huge change of how they incentivize people to pay. And what we've seen, to be honest, is prior some of the organizations that we've been involved with that have been held for ransom, they would just stand up new environments, or they would have incident response teams in trying to look at things and try to triage and fix everything and all this stuff. But the fear of pushing their information online and the IP and intangible assets is a huge incentive for people to pay. It's a genius move from the point of view, but it's a scary move from what the hell that means going forward.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we've seen this year as well is a big ramp up in the sophistication of that kind of attack as well. So, the sort of, in the past it was all about just clicking on a link and accidentally downloading some ransomware that just does whatever it does on a couple of machines. Whereas now we're seeing much more active attacks where it starts off with an actual account compromise, and then people getting in, seeding ransomware, targeting specific servers, and then triggering it to cause the sort of massive or the biggest impact that they can in the shortest space of time. So much more around kind of active attacks rather than just those passive bits of malware lying around.
Definitely, for sure. I agree that those are the exact kind of things that we've been dealing with as well too throughout the normal kind of pen testing stuff we do. We would get at least one of those phone calls every 2 weeks on a Friday at 4 p.m. I got one last Friday at 4:30, and I explained to the woman, which was a shit situation. I was like, look, it's literally one of these situations, and this poor woman ran a company with 5 staff, and she had, I think, $40,000 taken from her. And I just said, look, whatever it is, we'll do it for free, because this is just like, how are you going to survive otherwise? So look, one of the guys at ZX managed to help her all night and get everything fixed within our Microsoft Office 365, fix everything up and kick the bad guys out. And then she just played the waiting game with the banks, hoping that the money wasn't actually transferred out. And luckily she managed to get all her money back, which is a great win, which is a great story,
Yeah, that's good news.
Small people.
So what about moving into next year then? What's your, I hate playing the predictions game, but what's your predictions for next year?
Yeah, it's a good one. From a high level point of view, from again, a lot of it's recency bias from speaking to a number of people in the industry and what they think, and kind of agreeing, I suppose. The biggest thing that I would see next year in security as a whole, and it's not plugging anyone, would be Microsoft. Whether I agree with them or disagree with them is not the part of the conversation, but I think they will invest a shitload of money from a marketing point of view in the next year or two.
Yeah.
For the stage that by the time their data center is up and running, wherever it is, I don't even know if that's been announced yet. You may know, I've no idea. From speaking to a number of key people within government and in private, the position they're going to try and get themselves in to be New Zealand's data storage.
Yeah.
Like .com, like that, or .nz, I suppose. Like, I think that's one of the huge moves. And again, when you look at a lot of Kiwi businesses, whether it be Catalyst or whomever that do storage as well, instead of kicking up fusses and being angry about the situation, there needs to be a process of, well, we need to innovate as quick as possible. And all these big businesses that are coming to New Zealand, and best innovation is copy. What are they doing, and how can we copy it, and how can we stay relevant, and how can we push Kiwi owned, because Kiwi owned is huge. Because Microsoft have tapped into that, and whether it's around indigenous stuff or around that Maori data sovereignty, they are playing that fiddle extremely well at the moment.
Yeah.
Whether it's positive or not that's not my position to play in. But I think they will play a really, really strong marketing presence in the next year or two to effectively try and wipe out the competition. And whether Amazon or AWS, their approach is much more silent and like, oh, we've got big clients anyway, we don't need to say all this. I would personally see them shifting and trying to have a big presence as well too. I would be interested to see how they counter their main competitor in the market, and then how the smaller ones, again like Catalyst and the Kiwi owned ones, how they leverage their position, CCL, everyone like that, to try and continue to remain relevant and innovate. Will be a huge thing. That's what I see from a security point of view.
I think that's a really interesting space to watch. And I mean, Microsoft already have a very strong footprint here in terms of the sort of per capita uptake of Office 365 and all the rest of it. New Zealand's very much bought into the whole Microsoft thing anyway. So yeah, I think that's going to be a real interesting space to watch. Just very quickly, because I'm conscious of time, but what do you see? We've been, for a number of years now, we've sort of heard that next year is going to bring much more advanced sort of machine learning and AI type attacks. So, the defenders are always, the blue teams have been leveraging machine learning for a while now. And, we keep getting these sort of stories around the bad guys getting hold of the technology and using it. Is that something that you think is going to start coming through? We haven't really seen too much of that just yet, but.
Geez, it's a good question. And it's a terrible question at the same time, but it puts me in a position to give an answer. Like, my answer to those kind of things would be, like, all this ML and AI for security, like, it's all great and relevant, but a lot of certain businesses actually have the affordability, have the budgets to use it and for it to actually work for their benefit. And there's specific use cases where it works extremely well within certain environments of certain businesses. Like, I personally don't see it affecting the market for the next 2 or 3 years because the adoption's so slow and the budgets are so high. It's like when you bought a bloody plasma TV 20 years ago, it was like 10 grand. What is it now? Like $20. What's the price of milk, kind of thing. But yeah, it's I don't see it affecting New Zealand within the next year or two for sure. And the easiest way to put it, kind of to give you an example of my opinion on New Zealand's security posture as a whole, is I have a friend who runs a recruitment agency in Australia, and he's currently looking for a security consultant to be put into a bank. Employed as a software developer, and after 3 months he's tasked with exfiltrating data out of that bank to see if it's noticed. Like, that's the level that they're at, those banks in Australia. And even though those banks own the majority of the banks in New Zealand, there's no way New Zealand's security posture is at that level yet where a bank is going to employ someone to see if they're rogue. That's sophisticated and that's secure. And I think we're definitely a couple of years behind that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, you can never look in the future. It's always
Yeah. You know, in 2 weeks, I might get a job advert to hire someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, look, it's been great talking to you again. It always is. I hope you managed to get a well-earned break over Christmas. And
Oh, I will, mate. Don't you worry. I'll be sitting
yeah,
on a beach. I won't be checking the weather the next day like I do over here in Wellington. I just know it'll be good.
yeah, cool. So we'll pick up again in the new year. Have a fantastic
mate.
break, and thanks everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you in January.
Awesome.
I guess. All right.
Awesome. Have a great one.
Thank you very much. You too. See you later.